In every NBA draft, you're going to have winners.
Zion Williamson. My God.
And you're going to have losers.
Kwame Brown. He can't play.
And of course, it's no different in the 2021 NBA draft. In today's video, I am breaking down what I think are the biggest hits and the biggest misses from this year's draft. How's it going, guys? This is Troy, Half Court Report YouTube channel, and I know everybody's doing best and worst, winners and losers of the 2021 draft, so thanks for watching yet another one of those videos. Make sure you like the video. If it's your first time here, would love if you subscribe to the channel as well. So close to 15,000 subs, we're almost there. Okay, let's get into it. So, first thing on my list, what I think was the biggest surprise of the draft, Josh Primo to the Spurs at number 12. And this is very interesting because I had him mocked in the 20s. I saw some mocks where he was in the 30s. Josh Primo, if you're not super familiar with him, he had 1 year at Alabama. He's the youngest player in the draft. He won't turn 19 until around Christmas, but he had 1 year at Alabama, averaged about 8 points. Very veteran team that he was playing on, so he didn't get a ton of minutes. When he did play, he did all right, though. So this is one of those picks where you draft him a year early hoping that you're getting a lottery pick, because it's one of those things where if he has a good sophomore season, or if he would have had a good sophomore season, then you would think he would be a lotto pick. So the Spurs were trying to get in a year early on that. But begs the question, why did they pick him at 12? Because it seems, what kind of intel did they have? I would have thought that they could have traded down into the 20s, picked up another asset, gotten him there. Then I also think, okay, are the Spurs really as good at drafting as they're made out to be? Because, okay, yeah, they got Tim Duncan, but I mean, he was #1 overall pick, so you can't really give him much for that. Yeah, they got Tony Parker late in the first round back, like, what, 15 years ago. Then they got Emmanuel Ginobili, Manu, back in the late second round, like pick 50-something, I think like in the late 90s. So, yeah, those were two great picks. They got Kawhi, which was also another great pick when they traded for him. But other than that, I mean, in the last few years, Lonnie Walker, the fourth, I mean, he's okay. Luka Samanic hasn't really done anything. They got Keldon Johnson, who's looking like a pretty good pick late in the first round. But I just don't know if the Spurs are as awesome at drafting as we make them out to be. So maybe this Josh Primo pick will show that maybe they actually are as good as we think they are. So time will tell, and we shall see. Personally, I consider the Spurs a loser right now with what I know. And speaking of surprising picks, Memphis, they got Zaire Williams at number 10, which was a surprise. Then later on in the first round, they got SANTI ALDAMA, who was a 2-year player at Loyola in Maryland. Really good player out of the Patriot League, but it's one of those things, okay, was he just playing that well because of his level of competition, or is he really that good? So he's a player from Spain. It's looking like he will stay in Spain for at least another year or two before he comes over. But really solid player, at least from what you see in the metrics. Scored a lot of points, about 20 per game, about 10 rebounds per game. Can shoot it from 3 a little bit. His big thing is he needs to get stronger. And Memphis does have a good track record, of course, with Spanish players. The Gasol brothers, they had Juan Carlos Navarro for a year. I was reading about Aldama, and he idolized Pau Gasol when he was growing up in Spain. So I think the Grizzlies have that going for them, especially when news came out later that Santi Aldama had refused meetings with teams. He had told teams not to draft him. So the scuttlebutt is that the Grizzlies had made a promise to him to make sure he landed in Memphis. I'm not quite sure why they made the trade into the first round to get him when This is a guy who you probably could have gotten at pick number 40. But again, maybe they had some intel that another team was hot for ALDAMA. Then ZIAIRE Williams, who they got at number 10. Again, not exactly sure why they made the trade earlier in the week to send Jonas Valanciunas to the Pelicans in order to take back the contracts of Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe in order to switch those picks. I feel that ZIAIRE would have been there at pick 17, but I guess maybe the Grizzlies know something that we didn't know when they picked him at number 10, because that, you know, from what I know now, that seems a little high for ZIAIRE Williams, considering he had not that great of a year, his 1 year at Stanford, and there are other questions about his game. Also, let's talk about the runway and the player interest for this draft. I'd never seen anything like this before. Each player was announced, where they were from, their school, and walked down this big runway with their parents. And then when they were picked, they would walk down the runway again. So it was almost like a fashion show, because the outfits that these guys had on, like Jalen Green especially with his sequin jacket, Davion Mitchell looked like Prince. So I don't know, I enjoyed the fashion show aspect of it. I thought that was kind of funny, and I thought that was a nice way to appeal to, you know, the kids these days, and them wanting to, you know, the Instagram generation, if you will, and them wanting to show off their fancy outfits. I thought that was kind of fun. Also, I just spoke about Davion Mitchell, the Baylor guys. Let's talk about them. So Davion Mitchell was drafted to Sacramento. I wonder, what is Sacramento doing? Because now for their guard lineup, you've got De'Aaron Fox, you've got Tyrese Halliburton, you've got Davion Mitchell. That's all just at point guard. Oh, Darrell Wright as well. So you have 4 point guards on the roster. Then you have Buddy Hield at 2 guard. And granted, Darrell Wright and Tyrese Halliburton can play some 2 guard, but that's a lot of minutes. And let's not even count Darrell Wright. So let's just talk about Fox, Mitchell, Halliburton, and Hield. That's a lot of minutes you're going to have to find for those players. So, you know, that says to me a Buddy Hield trade has got to be imminent. Then the other Baylor guy, Jared Butler, who fell like a rock in the draft. I was almost wondering, did other teams know that he was medically cleared to play in the NBA? He was finally picked in the 40s. He's going to Utah, which I think is a perfect fit for him, not only play-wise, but also culturally. He seems like a real Utah Jazz kind of player. Assuming that the Jazz re-sign Mike Conley, which I think they will. Really nice understudy for him to be playing behind Mike Conley. I mean, this is a pick that in some mocks he was in the late teens, in the 20s, so to get him in the 40s, that's awesome value for Jared Butler. Now let's talk about what the Golden State Warriors are doing. I don't totally understand the Jonathan Kuminga pick. The Moses Moody pick, I understand a little bit. But from all that we've heard, this is a team that is wanting to compete next year. You're not going to be playing Jonathan Kuminga major minutes, or maybe any minutes at all in the playoffs. Probably the same with Moses Moody as well. These are 2 very raw players, Kuminga especially. You know, 5 years from now, Kuminga, Moody, and Wiseman, that could be maybe a good 3-headed monster for the Warriors. But as of right now, not sure what they're doing with those picks. I know that the intention, or they had wanted to possibly move those picks along with Wiseman for a superstar. That didn't happen, but eager to see what happens with the Warriors next season. Also, want to talk about what Houston did. So I love the pick trading up to get Şengün. I really like what they did by picking USMAN GARUBA in the 20s, whether he comes over or not, or stays in Spain. I think that's a great pick. I also like what they did by getting Josh Christopher late in the first round. I think maybe that was a little high, but I feel like he has good potential as maybe a late round steal. Then, of course, they got Jalen Green with the number 2 pick. I think the scoring that Jalen Green and Şengün are going to be doing, I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch that Houston team. They're going to be averaging like 130 points a night. Not sure about the defense, but I think that'll be a really fun team, and I think they are well on their way to having a nice rebuild, and, you know, maybe could see them in the playoffs in the next 3 to 4 seasons. I want to talk about Charlotte too. I really liked what they did with their draft. James Bouknight at number 11, I think, is an awesome pick. They even traded for Mason Plumlee, Yeah, Mason Plumlee. They traded for him before the draft started. And then the Hornets just went all in on drafting big men. They got Kai Jones in that trade with the Knicks. Then they got JT THOR later in the second round. So now their big man lineup, you have PJ Washington at the 4, but then you got Plumlee, Kai Jones, JT THOR, Vernon Carey, and Nick Richards, Carey and Richards, who they got in last year's draft. So now they have 5 centers on the roster along with PJ Washington. That says to me that they really didn't think they were going to have too much of a shot of getting anybody that they liked in free agency. Rashawn Holmes is like the best free agent center out there, and there is talk that he is going to re-sign with Sacramento. So I think Charlotte did what they needed to do in reinforcing their front line the best they could. Let's talk about the analysts too. Kendrick Perkins, I know this was his first time on the draft. He really didn't add a lot to the broadcast, in my opinion. I know that, what is it, on First Take, he'll just do like his 5-6 minute segments. That's a lot different than being on air for like 4 straight hours doing a draft. Early on, I'm not sure who it was on the panel with him, but they even mentioned, they were like, hey, Perk, you're not saying too much. And then he was like, oh, I got 4 hours to say some stuff. But when he did say some stuff, it really didn't add a whole lot to the broadcast. And if I have to see him make the joke one more time about how he couldn't pronounce a foreign player's name, it's like, okay, we get it. You don't know how to say the foreign guy's name. I mean, at least try. I mean, when I'm doing videos about foreign players, a lot of times I don't know how to say their names. I didn't know how to say Alexei Pokushevsky before I did a video on him. I still don't really know how to say Alperen Şengün's name, but at least I make an attempt to say it. I mean, there was that one time he was talking about Day'Ron Sharpe and saying that whatever team should pick him just because he didn't want to talk about Şengün and say his name. So I thought his commentary was a little bit lazy. I was not a huge fan of Kendrick Perkins on the draft, sorry to say. And, you know, while we're talking about analysts, let's talk about lack thereof. Where was Fran Fraschilla? Fran Fraschilla always adds so much to the broadcast when he's talking about the international players that were drafted. I love when Fran Fraschilla comes on and gives his commentary. You know, we all remember him talking about Bruno Caboclo 2 years away from being 2 years away. Just nice little tidbits from Fran Fraschilla. So I don't know what his deal was. Maybe he's not with ESPN anymore. I'm not sure. But I did miss, I noticeably missed Fran from the broadcast this year. A couple more teams. I really like what the Clippers did. I feel like they got a good pick when they traded for Keon Johnson and picking up BJ Boston and Jason Preston in the second round. Maybe BJ Boston will be a two-way player. I'm not sure. Maybe Preston will. I'm not sure. But I like what they're doing, especially since it looks like they'll probably be punting next season because I don't think Kawhi will be playing. So they should be a playoff team, but I don't really see them competing for a championship with a team centered around Paul George and, or just looking at the lineups here, what, Trey Mann and 50-year-old Rajon Rondo. So I think it's good that they are getting some youth onto that team, and Keon Johnson, BJ Boston, and Jason Preston. BJ Boston especially, I think he could have been a late first rounder, early second rounder. They get him in the 40s. So I think that's a good pickup for them. While we're talking about guys picked late, Sharife Cooper going to the Hawks. I didn't really buy the buzz about him being like in the late teens or early 20s. I saw him maybe as a guy in the late 20s or early 30s, but getting Sharife Cooper where the Hawks got him, especially since he is an Atlanta guy, I really like when guys can play their pro ball where they're from. I like him as a nice backup to Trae Young, and I think these, just imagine those second unit pick and rolls with Sharife Cooper and Onyeka Okongwu when he comes back from his injury. I think that's going to be really special, and that's not going to be fair to all the other second units in the league. I think that'll be fun to see, and I think Atlanta fans are going to love the type of fire that Sharife Cooper brings to the game. Just don't expect him to shoot it very well or defend very well, but I'm excited to see Sharife in the ATL. And then Brooklyn, I think they had a really good draft too. Just check out what they did. They traded for Day'Ron Sharpe, and they also got Cameron Thomas in the first round. So you know that Kyrie Irving, you know that James Harden are going to miss lots of time. I mean, they always do, whether it's for load management, whether it's an injury, whatever. Cameron Thomas is going to have some games where he can just fill in for those guys and just light it up, because this dude just scores it like a madman. He's not going to give a whole lot else to the team, but he's going to leave it out there and he is going to score like crazy. Then Day'Ron Sharpe, I like him at the center spot because right now all you have is DeAndre Jordan and Nick Claxton. Day'Ron Sharpe, I see him as a guy who is going to get rebounds, who's going to be an enforcer inside. The thing about Day'Ron Sharpe, you can run the offense through him as well. So I think that's something that Brooklyn is really going to like. But hey, that's what I think. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this year's draft. Who were your winners and losers? Make sure you like the video. If it's your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. My name is Troy, and I'll catch you next time on the Half Court Report.